Get your black ass out of my seat, girl. Richard Thornton's manicured nails dug into Jasmine Roberts' shoulder as he yanked her upward. Her coffee spilled across the Wall Street Journal. Hot liquid splashed her designer pants. He shoved her into the aisle and dropped into the premium suite chair like conquering territory. That's better. Richard smoothed his tailored suit, claiming her armrest. Some people forget where they belong. Jasmine stood calmly under the ornate chandelier of the Grand Meridian Hotel's exclusive diamond lounge. Her understated silk blouse and perfectly tailored pants contrasted with Richard's flashy gold watch and overpowering cologne. His platinum membership card lay conspicuously on the table as he adjusted himself in her warm leather seat. Phones lifted around them. A young influencer went live on Instagram. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 50 hotel guests watched a theft in real time. Jasmine gripped her access card. The holographic Diamond Elite emblem was clearly visible. Have you ever watched evil win while everyone just stood there? Justice was coming. Lounge doors closing in 10 minutes. All guests must be seated for the exclusive champagne service. Guest relations manager Kevin Mitchell rushed toward the commotion, his perfectly coiffed hair bouncing with each step. He spotted Richard settled comfortably in the premier seat and Jasmine standing awkwardly in the aisle. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry about this disruption." Kevin's voice dripped sympathy as he touched Richard's shoulder. "Sir, are you okay?" Jasmine stepped forward, access card extended. "This is my assigned seat. Reserved specifically for me." Kevin barely glanced at the card. His eyes swept over her understated clothing, her minimal jewelry, her dark skin. "Miss, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The standard lounge is toward the other end of the hall." Finally, Richard sighed dramatically. "Someone with common sense." Jasmine kept her voice level. "Could you please look at my access card?" "Ma'am, please don't make this more difficult." Kevin positioned himself between Jasmine and the seat. "I'm sure the regular lounge is very comfortable." Behind them, guests whispered. Phones emerged from pockets. A marketing executive named Taylor Wilson opened Instagram and hit record. "I don't understand the confusion," Jasmine said quietly. "My reservation clearly shows." "Look at her," Richard interrupted, gesturing dismissively. "Does she look like she belongs in the Diamond Lounge? I'm a Platinum Elite member. I've been staying at Grand Meridian Properties for 12 years. Kevin nodded knowingly. "Of course, sir. We appreciate your loyalty." "I have the same loyalty program status," Jasmine offered. "If you could just verify." "Ma'am, I don't have time for games," Kevin's tone sharpened. "Now, please find your correct lounge so we can begin our exclusive service." Taylor's live stream counter climbed. 500 viewers. 800, 1,200. Comments flooded the screen. "This is discrimination. Why won't he look at her card? Call the supervisor." Jasmine pulled out her phone. The screen showed multiple missed calls and text messages. One read, "Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. Where are you? Putting on quite a show, aren't you?" Richard smirked, pretending to be important. Kevin noticed Jasmine's expensive-looking phone but dismissed it. "Ma'am, final warning. Move to the standard lounge or I'll need to call security." "I am in my assigned lounge," Jasmine repeated calmly. "No, you're not." Kevin's voice rose. "This is the Diamond Lounge. You're clearly in the wrong place." The assumption hung in the air like poison. Other guests shifted uncomfortably. Some filmed openly now. Jasmine glanced at her Hermes bag on the side table. Her initials JR were embossed in gold. The bag cost more than most people's monthly rent, but Kevin's eyes never traveled toward it. "Ma'am," an elderly guest called out. "Maybe you should check her card." "Thank you, but I can handle this," Kevin snapped back. Richard examined his manicured nails. "I can't believe this is even a discussion. Look at us. Look at her." It's obvious who belongs where. Jasmine's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Her breathing remained steady, controlled. Years of meditation and executive training kept her composure intact. 8 minutes to champagne service. The hotel manager's voice came through the speaker system. Kevin turned to Richard. Sir, I apologize for this delay. We'll have this resolved immediately. He pressed the call button for additional staff. Marcus, I need assistance in the Diamond Lounge. We have a guest in the wrong lounge who won't comply. Jasmine watched the interaction with clinical interest. Every word, every gesture was being recorded by multiple devices. The documentation was perfect. Taylor's stream had reached 3,000 viewers. Her whispered commentary captured everything. The manager won't even look at her access card. This is insane. I've seen this before, Richard announced to nearby guests. They get one credit card, buy one expensive item, and think they can fool everyone. He gestured at Jasmine's clothes. Designer blouse, please. Probably bought at an outlet mall. Jasmine said nothing. Her silence seemed to irritate Richard more than arguments would have. At least say something, he taunted. Defend yourself, unless you know you're wrong. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The assistant manager's footsteps approached from behind. Marcus Bennett, 9-year Grand Meridian veteran, carried himself with practiced authority. His eyes immediately assessed the situation. Well-dressed white man in premium seating, casually dressed black woman standing in the aisle. The math was simple in his mind. What seems to be the problem here? Marcus's voice carried the weight of policy and procedure. This guest, Kevin emphasized the word like an accusation, refuses to move to the standard lounge. She's disrupting our exclusive service schedule. Marcus didn't ask to see Jasmine's card. Didn't ask for her name or reservation number. His assumption was instant and complete. Ma'am, you need to find your correct lounge immediately. We have a schedule to maintain. Jasmine extended her access card again. I am in my correct lounge. This is my documentation. Marcus barely glanced at the card. Ma'am, I don't have time for fake documents or games. Move to the standard lounge now, or I'll call hotel security. The threat landed like a slap. Several guests gasped. Taylor's viewer count jumped to 5,000. Jasmine looked around the lounge. Every face told the same story. They saw her skin color, her understated clothes, and made their judgment. The access card in her hand might as well have been invisible. 6 minutes to champagne service, came another announcement. Perfect, Richard said, settling deeper into the seat. I have an important business meeting later. I can't afford delays because of this nonsense. Jasmine nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision. She pulled out her phone and opened an app. The loading screen showed a Grand Meridian Hotel's logo. What's she doing now? Kevin muttered to Marcus. Probably calling someone to complain, Marcus replied dismissively. They always do. Jasmine's thumb moved across the screen, navigating through menus with practiced efficiency. Her expression remained calm, almost serene. The storm was about to break. We have a situation in the Diamond Lounge, Marcus spoke into his radio, requesting additional staff support. Within seconds, 2 more hotel employees appeared. Jennifer Patel, 24, fresh-faced and eager to impress. Carlos Rodriguez, 42, a veteran with tired eyes and zero patience for disruptions. What's the situation? Carlos asked, crossing his arms as he looked Jasmine up and down. The guest refuses to move to the standard lounge, Kevin explained. Won't accept that she's in the wrong place. Jennifer positioned herself behind Jasmine, blocking any retreat. Ma'am, we really need you to cooperate here. 4 staff members now formed a semicircle around Jasmine in the narrow aisle. Richard watched from his stolen throne, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. This is embarrassing, he announced loudly. I'm trying to prepare for an important business meeting, and this woman is holding up the entire service with her delusions. Jasmine remained calm, her phone still in her hand. The Grand Meridian app was open, but the screen wasn't visible to the staff. 5 minutes to champagne service. The hotel director's voice cut through the tension. Staff, please prepare for exclusive service. You hear that? Marcus's voice hardened. You're delaying 50 guests because you can't accept reality. Yeah, Jennifer added, emboldened by the group dynamic. Just take your real seat and we can all move on. Carlos stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Listen carefully. Move to the standard lounge now, or security will remove you in handcuffs. Your choice. The threat of handcuffs sent a ripple through the lounge. More phones appeared. Taylor's Instagram stream had exploded to 15,000 viewers. Comments flying faster than she could read them. Call the police. This is 2025. Sue them all. Hashtag Grand Meridian Racism. Richard basked in the attention. I've never seen such entitled behavior. Some people think the rules don't apply to them. He turned to address the filming guests. You're all witnesses to this disruption. I tried to handle this quietly, but she just won't listen to reason. A businessman in a nearby chair lowered his laptop. Excuse me, but shouldn't you at least look at her access card before, sir? Please don't interfere, Marcus cut him off sharply. We're handling this professionally. Professionally? The businessman's eyebrows rose. You haven't even verified her card. Carlos whirled around. Are you questioning our procedures? I'm questioning why you won't look at a piece of plastic, the man replied evenly. Kevin's face flushed. We don't need to examine obvious forgeries. How do you know it's forged if you haven't looked? Asked an elderly woman nearby. The staff was losing control of the narrative. Guests were turning against them, and the phones kept recording. Look at her, Richard stood up from the seat, gesturing wildly. Use your eyes. Does anything about this woman scream Diamond Elite guest to you? He pointed at Jasmine's blouse. That's a $50 top from Target. I can tell the quality when I see it. Jasmine glanced down at her clothing, then back at Richard with mild curiosity. How can you determine the price of my clothes? Because I know cheap when I see it, Richard snapped. Your shoes are probably from Payless. Your pants look like they came from Walmart. Sir is absolutely right, Jennifer nodded eagerly. Diamond Lounge guests have certain presentation standards. Carlos crossed his arms. We're trained to identify guests who might be out of place. It's about maintaining the premium experience for legitimate customers. Jasmine's phone buzzed with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, emails marked urgent. One message preview was visible, board meeting moved to 4 p.m. Where are you? Richard spotted it and laughed. Oh, look. She's got someone texting her about a board meeting. How cute. Probably her supervisor at McDonald's. Several guests shifted uncomfortably at the cruelty, but the staff seemed energized by Richard's confidence. Ma'am, Marcus's patience had evaporated. This is your final warning. Security is already on their way. Actually, Jasmine said quietly, I'd like them to see this. Her calm response seemed to unnerve the staff. They'd expected anger, arguments, threats of lawsuits. Instead, she stood there like she was collecting evidence. See what? Kevin snapped. You making a fool of yourself? Her proving she doesn't belong here? Richard added with a laugh. Look at her. Really look. Does anything about this woman say Diamond Elite to you? He gestured dramatically at her appearance. The shoes alone tell the whole story. Those aren't Diamond Lounge shoes. A teenage guest whispered loudly. This is so messed up. They're being totally racist. Jennifer spun around. Excuse me? We're following standard protocols here. This has nothing to do with race. Then why won't you look at her card? The teenager shot back. Because we can tell when someone's lying, Carlos replied coldly. It's called experience. Jasmine glanced down at her comfortable walking shoes, then back at Richard. Still no anger in her expression. If anything, she looked satisfied. Miss has a point, Carlos said. Diamond Elite guests dress appropriately. They understand the environment they're entering. Exactly, Jennifer nodded eagerly. It's about respect. Respect for the hotel. Respect for other guests. Respect for the premium experience. Taylor whispered to her live stream. This is the most racist thing I've ever seen in person. They won't even look at her access card. Her viewer count hit 25,000. The hashtag Grand Meridian discrimination was starting to trend on Twitter. Marcus keyed his radio again. Security. What's your ETA to the Diamond Lounge? 2 minutes out, came the crackling response. Perfect. Richard clapped his hands together. Finally, some professional handling of this situation. He looked directly at Jasmine. I hope you're happy with yourself. Now, everyone in this lounge knows exactly what kind of person you are. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. What kind of person am I? The question caught Richard off guard. She'd expected denial, not curiosity. You're the kind who lies, he said, regaining his composure. Who tries to take what isn't yours? Who thinks you can fool people with fake documents and sob stories? I haven't told any stories, Jasmine observed quietly. Your whole presence here is a story, Richard shot back. A fantasy where you belong in the Diamond Lounge. Well, reality is about to knock. The staff nodded in agreement. They'd created a unified narrative. Jasmine was a fraud. They were the heroes maintaining order. Heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. 2 hotel security officers appeared at the lounge door, their radios crackling with status updates. There she is, Kevin pointed at Jasmine like identifying a criminal. The guest causing the disruption. Officer Williams, a black man in his 40s, approached with his partner, Officer Chen, an Asian woman with kind eyes but firm demeanor. What seems to be the problem here? Officer Williams asked professionally. Marcus launched into his prepared explanation. The guest refuses to move to her assigned lounge. Claims this Diamond Lounge seat belongs to her despite obvious evidence to the contrary. What obvious evidence? Officer Chen asked. The staff exchanged glances. They'd been so confident in their assumptions, they hadn't considered someone might ask for actual proof. Well, Kevin stammered. I mean, look at her. Officer Williams' expression hardened slightly. Sir, I need specific evidence, not observations about appearance. Richard sensed the staff's hesitation and jumped in. Officers, I've been patient, but this woman has been harassing me for 10 minutes. I just want to sit in the seat I paid for. Sir, we understand, Officer Williams replied. Then to Jasmine, ma'am, your access card, please. Jasmine handed over the holographic card. Officer Chen examined it carefully, her brow furrowing as she read. The lounge had gone almost silent except for the hum of electronics and whispered commentary from filming guests. Officer Chen looked at the access card again, then at Jasmine, then at Richard sitting in the premium seat. Her expression shifted from professional neutrality to confusion. This access card says Diamond Elite, reserved seating, Jasmine Roberts, she said slowly. Marcus stepped forward desperately. Obviously forged. Look at her. Does she look like she can afford Diamond Elite status? That's not how we determine, Officer Chen began, but Richard cut her off. Please, officer. Use common sense here. I'm a platinum member. I've been loyal to Grand Meridian for 12 years. Why would I lie about my seat? He pulled out his phone showing his Grand Meridian app. Look, here's my reservation. Platinum access, general seating. Officer Williams examined Richard's phone, then looked back at Jasmine's holographic access card. The situation was becoming more complex than a simple seating dispute. Ma'am, Officer Williams addressed Jasmine, can you show us some ID and explain how you obtained this access card? Jasmine reached slowly into her pocket, her movements deliberate and calm. The entire lounge watched as she withdrew her wallet, but instead of pulling out a driver's license, her fingers moved to a different pocket for her phone. "Actually," Jasmine said, her voice carrying a new quality, quiet authority that made everyone lean in, "I think there's something you all need to see first." The app on her phone had finished loading. The storm was about to break. Jasmine's thumb moved across her phone screen with practiced precision. The Grand Meridian Hotel's app interface shifted, revealing layers most guests never saw. Executive Dashboard. CEO Portal. Property Management System. The screen filled with corporate data, authorization codes, and a header that made Officer Chen's breath catch in her throat. Jasmine Roberts, Chief Executive Officer, Authority Level, Supreme All Access. Employee ID, 0000001. Founder, CEO. Direct reports, 35,000 employees. Officer Williams leaned over his partner's shoulder to see the screen, his professional composure cracked for just a moment. "Ma'am," he whispered. The change in the security officer's demeanor was immediate and unmistakable. They stepped back slightly, their entire posture shifting from enforcement to deference. Carlos noticed the officer's reaction first. "What? What are you looking at?" Jasmine held the phone screen toward the assistant manager. Carlos's eyes moved across the display, processing each word. His face went from confident authority to confusion to dawning horror in the span of 3 seconds. That can't be." Carlos's radio slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. Kevin leaned in to see what had shocked his colleague into silence. When the information registered, his face drained of all color. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!" Jennifer and Marcus crowded closer, squinting at the screen. The corporate hierarchy was crystal clear. Every person in this hotel, from the general manager to the newest front desk clerk, reported ultimately to the woman they'd been humiliating for the past 10 minutes. "Ms. Roberts," Officer Williams said quietly, his voice carrying new respect, we weren't aware of your position." Jasmine looked at the security officer with calm eyes. "Of course you weren't. That was entirely the point." The lounge had gone dead silent, except for the hum of electronics and the soft sound of phones recording. Every guest sensed the dramatic shift in power, though most couldn't see the phone screen. Richard, still seated in the premium chair, looked around in confusion. "What's everyone staring at? Can we please resolve this and begin the champagne service?" Jasmine turned the phone screen toward him. Richard's eyes scanned the display, his expression cycling through disbelief, recognition, and pure terror. You can't be," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "I own 71% of this hotel chain, Mr. Thornton." Jasmine's voice remained calm, but it now carried unmistakable authority. "I don't just own this seat. I own every seat in this lounge. I own the lounge itself. I own the building we're standing in." The words hit Richard like a physical blow. He gripped the armrests of the seat, her seat. As the full magnitude of his situation became clear, Marcus found his voice, though it trembled. "Ma'am, we had no idea. We were just following standard what?" Jasmine interrupted gently. "Standard procedure is to examine guest documentation before making assumptions. Standard procedure is to treat every customer with dignity and respect." She looked at each staff member in turn. "Instead, you made judgments based on my appearance. You refused to look at my access card. You threatened me with arrest." Jennifer's hands were shaking. "Ms. Roberts, I'm so sorry. We made a terrible mistake." "You made several terrible mistakes," Jasmine corrected. "But the biggest one was assuming that respect is earned by appearance rather than humanity." Taylor's live stream had exploded to 89,000 viewers. The comments section was moving too fast to read, but the sentiment was clear. Justice was finally coming. Jasmine checked her watch, not for champagne service time, but for something else entirely. Her calendar showed a reminder that made several guests gasp when they glimpsed it: emergency board meeting, Discrimination Protocol Review, 4 p.m. Legal Department Federal Compliance Violation Report, 4:15 p.m. Media Relations Press Conference Prep, 5 p.m. Current time, 3:47 p.m. Officer Chen realized what she was seeing. Ma'am, this was planned. Jasmine nodded slowly. I've been conducting unannounced assessments of our guest experience protocols. Today's test revealed systematic failures at multiple levels. The staff stood frozen, understanding that they'd walked into a carefully orchestrated evaluation and failed spectacularly. Richard tried to stand from the seat, but his legs were unsteady. I didn't know. I had no idea. Would it have mattered? Jasmine asked quietly. If I were just Jasmine Roberts, guest, instead of Jasmine Roberts, CEO, would that justify your behavior? The question hung in the air like an indictment. Richard had no answer because they both knew the truth. Mr. Thornton, Jasmine continued, you're currently sitting in a seat that is reserved exclusively for the chief executive officer when visiting. You've been occupying the CEO's personal seat. Richard looked down at the leather chair as if it had suddenly become molten. Everything about his situation, his assumptions, his cruelty, his public humiliation of this woman, crashed down on him at once. Marcus desperately tried to salvage his career. Ma'am, if we could speak privately, I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Jasmine replied. You and your staff discriminated against a guest based on race and perceived social class. She gestured to the cameras still recording. That discrimination happened to target your own chief executive officer. But more importantly, it was captured by dozens of witnesses and broadcast live to nearly 100,000 viewers. Kevin found his voice. Ms. Roberts, please, we can fix this. We can make this right. Jasmine looked at him with something that might have been pity. Mr. Mitchell, you threatened to have me removed in handcuffs for sitting in my own seat. How exactly do you propose to make this right? The staff had no answer. They'd crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, made assumptions that revealed their deepest biases, and done it all while being recorded. Officer Williams cleared his throat. Ma'am, what would you like us to do about this situation? Jasmine considered the question. Around her, 50 guests waited to see how power would be wielded when the tables turned. Officer Williams, I'd like you and Officer Chen to witness what happens next. The documentation will be important for the federal investigation. Federal investigation. The words sent a chill through everyone who heard them. Jasmine opened her phone again, this time to the contacts list. The screen showed names that made the staff's remaining hope evaporate. Legal Department, Direct Line. Human Resources, Emergency Protocol. Media Relations, Crisis Management. Board Chair, Immediate Response. Ladies and gentlemen, Jasmine announced to the lounge, her voice carrying the authority of ownership. I apologize for this delay. What you've witnessed today is exactly why systematic change is necessary in corporate hospitality. She looked at Richard, still frozen in her seat. Mr. Thornton, you have approximately 30 seconds to return to your actual assigned seat before I make the first of several phone calls. Richard's expensive composure cracked completely. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, you meant every word, Jasmine said quietly. The question now is what happens next. The entire lounge held its breath as justice prepared to be served. Jasmine pressed the first number on her phone. The call connected immediately, broadcasting on speaker for the entire lounge to hear. Jasmine Roberts' office, Legal Department. This is Thomas Henderson. Thomas, this is Jasmine. I'm currently in the Diamond Lounge at our San Fernando property, and I need you to prepare immediate documentation for a federal discrimination case. The lawyer's voice sharpened with concern. Ma'am, what's the situation? I've just been discriminated against by 4 of our own staff members and a guest. The incident was captured on multiple devices and is currently being live-streamed to over 100,000 viewers. Thomas's silence lasted 3 seconds, an eternity in legal terms. Ma'am, I'll have a full legal team standing by within the hour. Are you injured? Not physically, but our company's reputation and federal compliance status are in serious jeopardy. Jasmine looked directly at Marcus while speaking. Employee number 29,574 just threatened to have me arrested for sitting in my assigned seat. I'll need his complete employment file and termination papers prepared immediately. Marcus's face went ashen. Employee number 29,574. Jasmine knew his employee ID from memory. Ms. Roberts, Marcus whispered desperately. Please, I have a family. I have a mortgage. I was just following what I thought was protocol. Protocol? Jasmine's voice remained calm but carried steel. Show me the protocol that says staff members should refuse to examine guest access cards based on skin color. Marcus had no answer because no such protocol existed. Jasmine continued into the phone. I also need comprehensive documentation on our current anti-discrimination policies. Clearly, they're failing if our staff can't distinguish between legitimate security concerns and racial profiling. Should I contact the Federal Hospitality Commission? Thomas asked. Yes, and the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. They'll want to review our compliance immediately. The legal implications were mounting by the second. Federal agencies meant investigations, fines, and potential operational restrictions. Also prepare civil rights violation documentation under Title II of the Civil Rights Act, both individual and institutional liability. Jasmine ended the call and immediately dialed the second number, Human Resources. Jasmine Roberts' office, HR emergency line. This is Director Angela Williams. Angela, this is Jasmine. I need immediate employment actions for staff members at our San Fernando property. The lounge was dead silent except for the sound of phones recording and the soft crying from several staff members. Kevin Mitchell, employee 17,634. Full investigation into discrimination violations. 6-month unpaid suspension pending mandatory bias training completion. He must pass a psychological evaluation before reinstatement consideration. Kevin's knees buckled. 6 months without pay would mean losing his apartment, possibly his car. Jennifer Patel, employee 23,985. 1-year probation with mandatory weekly counseling sessions. Diversity training certification required monthly. Any future incident results in immediate termination. Jennifer nodded frantically, grateful to still have employment. Carlos Rodriguez, employee 31,456. Mandatory 100-hour bias training program, professional counseling evaluation, and demotion from senior staff, salary reduction of 15% for 2 years. Carlos's face crumpled. 15 years of career advancement wiped out by 10 minutes of prejudice. And Marcus Bennett, employee 29,574. Jasmine's voice carried finality. Immediate termination with cause, 0 severance, forfeiture of all benefits, including pension contributions, and permanent notation preventing rehire anywhere in the hospitality industry. Marcus collapsed completely, sobbing in the lounge aisle. Please, Ms. Roberts, please don't destroy my life. I made a mistake, but I can learn. I can change. Jasmine looked down at him with something between pity and steel resolve. Mr. Bennett, you had 9 years to learn. 9 years of mandatory bias training, diversity workshops, and customer service protocols. Instead, you chose to threaten your own CEO with arrest based on assumptions about my race and social class. She turned back to the phone. Angela, implement immediate policy changes. Body camera requirements for all customer-facing staff effective tomorrow morning. Any guest complaint involving potential discrimination must be recorded and reviewed by a bias response team within 24 hours. Budget allocation for the new program, ma'am? $50 million annually for the first 3 years. This systematic failure ends today. The number sent shock waves through the listening guests. $50 million, more money than many small companies saw in their entire existence, dedicated solely to preventing discrimination. Also establish a guest advocate position in every property, independent oversight with direct reporting to my office, and create an anonymous bias reporting system with real-time alerts to management. Ma'am, the operational changes will be significant. The operational cost of discrimination is higher. We'll also be implementing quarterly bias assessments for all customer-facing employees. Failure means immediate retraining or termination. Jasmine ended the HR call and turned her attention to Richard, who was still sitting in her seat like he'd been turned to stone. Mr. Thornton, now we discuss your situation. She pulled up his LinkedIn profile on her phone, turning the screen toward the recording cameras so Taylor's 150,000 livestream viewers could see it clearly. Richard Thornton, Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at PrimeCore Technologies, Corporate Ethics Committee, Chairman. Recent LinkedIn post, and I quote, "Zero tolerance for workplace discrimination. We must all do better." The hypocrisy was so stark it was almost surreal. A man who publicly championed inclusion had just committed one of the most blatant acts of racial discrimination many guests had ever witnessed. Mr. Thornton, you publicly advocate for diversity while privately telling black women to get their black ass to the back of the hotel. Your employer will find this interesting. Richard's carefully constructed professional facade was disintegrating in real time. Please, I didn't mean, I'm not usually like this. You meant every word, Jasmine said quietly. The question is, what happens next? She pulled up her contacts again, showing him a name, PrimeCore Executive Relations Direct Line. I can make one phone call and end your career today. Your company has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, don't they? Richard nodded miserably. Or, Jasmine continued, you can choose accountability over denial. You have two options. The entire lounge leaned forward. Justice was about to be precisely measured. Option 1, you record a public apology that will be shared across all social media platforms. You complete 200 hours of community service specifically at civil rights organizations. You undergo 6 months of professional bias counseling. You accept lifetime monitoring status at all Grand Meridian properties, meaning every interaction you have with hotel staff will be documented. Richard's mouth opened wordlessly. Additionally, you'll speak at diversity training sessions for corporate executives, sharing exactly what you did and why it was wrong. Your story will become a case study in unconscious bias training. The requirements were comprehensive and humiliating, but not career-ending. Option 2, I file federal discrimination charges under Title II of the Civil Rights Act. You face up to $500,000 in civil penalties under California's hate crime enhancement laws. You receive a lifetime ban from Grand Meridian and all partner hotels, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and Four Seasons, and I personally call your CEO to provide video evidence of today's incident. The second option was professional suicide and financial ruin. Jasmine dialed her third number. Media Relations. Jasmine Roberts' office. Crisis Communications. This is Director Michael Carter. Michael, this is Jasmine. We have a major incident requiring immediate response. I was racially discriminated against by our own staff and a guest at our San Fernando property. The incident is viral on social media. Ma'am, how viral are we talking about? Taylor held up her phone, showing the viewer counter climbing in real time. 189,000. 195,000. 203,000 people watching live. Currently over 200,000 people watching live across multiple platforms. The hashtag Grand Meridian Discrimination is trending #1 on Twitter. I need a full press conference set up for 6 p.m. today. Complete transparency protocol. Ma'am, the stock price implications could be severe. Maybe we should consider damage control messaging first. Jasmine's voice carried absolute authority. We're not controlling damage. We're owning our mistakes completely and demonstrating exactly how we're fixing them. Transparency builds trust. Cover-ups destroy companies. The media director's voice was strained. Ma'am, the board might want to discuss strategic messaging options. I am the board. 71% majority shareholder. This is my decision, and it's final. Jasmine looked directly into Taylor's phone camera, addressing the live stream audience directly. Ladies and gentlemen watching this stream, what you've witnessed today is exactly why systematic change is necessary in corporate America. This wasn't just about one seat in one lounge. This was about the assumptions, biases, and casual cruelty that marginalized people face every single day. She gestured to the staff and Richard. These people made judgments based on my skin color and clothing. They refused to examine evidence. They threatened me with arrest, and they did it confidently because they thought there would be no consequences. The live stream comments were flying too fast to read, but the overwhelming sentiment was clear. Justice was finally being served. Jasmine turned back to Richard. Mr. Thornton, the 200,000 people watching this stream are waiting for your decision. Do you choose accountability and reform, or legal consequences and career destruction? Richard looked around the lounge desperately. 50 faces stared back at him, most showing no sympathy whatsoever. He'd earned their judgment with racist assumptions and public cruelty. I choose option 1, he whispered. The live stream audience can't hear you, Jasmine said firmly. Speak clearly so your choice is properly documented. I choose option 1, Richard said loudly, tears streaming down his face. I choose to apologize publicly and complete the community service and counseling. Jasmine nodded to Officer Williams. Officer, please document that Mr. Thornton has selected accountability over denial. His public apology will be recorded and distributed across all social media platforms. She turned to the devastated staff members. As for you 4, your employment fates have been determined based on your individual actions and leadership roles in this discrimination. Marcus was still collapsed on the floor, understanding that 9 years of career advancement had been destroyed by 10 minutes of biased assumptions. The systematic changes I'm implementing today will ensure this never happens again at any Grand Meridian property. I guarantee it. The lounge erupted in applause. Justice had been served, systematically, thoroughly, and publicly. The real work was just beginning. 20 minutes later, the lounge had been cleared, and a new staff team arrived. Marcus Bennett walked past the windows in tears, escorted by hotel security toward the exit. His 9-year career with Grand Meridian had ended in complete disgrace. Jasmine finally took her rightful seat in the reserved area as Richard was relocated to a standard seat in the regular lounge. The symbolic reversal wasn't lost on the guests still filming. Ladies and gentlemen, came the hotel director's voice over the speaker system. This is Director Elizabeth Rodriguez. I want to personally apologize for the delay and the unacceptable behavior you witnessed today. Ms. Roberts, it's an honor to have you with us. Taylor's live stream had stabilized at 287,000 viewers. The comments section was a river of justice-satisfied emojis and demands for accountability across all industries. Jasmine pulled out her laptop and began typing. Within minutes, she'd drafted a company-wide email that would reach all 35,000 Grand Meridian employees before the champagne service began. The subject line read, Immediate Implementation, Zero Tolerance Discrimination Protocol. Effective immediately, Jasmine typed, Grand Meridian Hotels implements the most comprehensive anti-bias program in hospitality history. Today's incident revealed systematic failures that end now. She outlined the new policies, the Dignity Protocol, mandatory body cameras for all customer interactions, anonymous bias reporting through mobile app with 24-hour response guarantee, independent guest advocate in every property, quarterly discrimination audits by third-party civil rights organizations, $50 million annual budget for bias prevention and employee training. Jasmine looked up from her laptop to address the lounge directly. I want everyone here to understand what just happened. This wasn't about punishment. This was about prevention. A businesswoman nearby raised her hand. Ms. Roberts, how do you ensure this cultural change actually happens? Accountability systems, Jasmine replied. Every employee interaction is now monitored. Every bias complaint triggers immediate investigation, and every violation has real consequences. She showed her laptop screen to nearby guests. I'm implementing the 3-strike system. First incident, mandatory retraining. Second incident, 6-month unpaid suspension. Third incident, permanent termination with industry blacklisting. Kevin, who had been quietly crying in the back hallway, approached hesitantly. Ms. Roberts, I know I don't deserve to ask, but is there any way to earn back your trust? Jasmine studied him for a moment. Mr. Mitchell, you assumed I was lying based on my appearance. You refused to examine evidence. How do you propose to earn back trust? I want to become part of the solution, he said, voice trembling. I want to help train other staff members so they never make my mistakes. That's actually not a terrible idea, Jasmine said thoughtfully. Personal redemption through education of others. We'll discuss that during your suspension period. Officer Williams, still in the lounge documenting the incident, looked up from his report. Ms. Roberts, I've seen a lot of discrimination cases. I've never seen someone with your level of power choose education over revenge. Revenge doesn't create systematic change, Jasmine replied. It just creates more resentment. Education creates understanding. Understanding creates lasting transformation. Taylor held up her phone, still live streaming. Ms. Roberts, people in the comments want to know, was this really a test? Jasmine smiled slightly. I conduct unannounced assessments of our guest experience regularly, but I never expected the results to be this comprehensive. She opened her calendar app, showing the pre-scheduled meetings. The emergency board meeting, legal review, and press conference were already planned. I've been documenting discrimination incidents across our system for months. The revelation sent a murmur through the lounge. This hadn't been random. It had been a systematic investigation. Today's incident gave me everything I needed to justify the most aggressive anti-discrimination program in corporate history. A young guest called out, "What about other hotel chains? Will they change, too?" They'll have to, Jasmine replied confidently. Within 48 hours, every major hospitality company will announce similar programs. Nobody wants to be the business that tolerates discrimination after this goes viral. Her prediction proved accurate. By the time Jasmine left the Diamond Lounge, Marriott had already issued a statement promising comprehensive bias prevention measures. Hilton followed an hour later. Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from her media director. Stock price up 3.2% after your transparency announcement. Investors love the accountability approach. The hospitality industry was transforming in real time. Richard, relegated to the standard lounge, approached Jasmine during the champagne service. His designer confidence had been completely stripped away. Ms. Roberts, I need you to know I have biracial nieces. I never thought I was racist. I don't understand how I became that person today. Jasmine looked at him with something approaching sympathy. Mr. Thornton, racism isn't always conscious. Sometimes it's learned assumptions we don't even recognize. That's why the counseling requirement exists. Will you tell PrimeCorp what happened? That depends entirely on how seriously you take your rehabilitation, Jasmine replied. Demonstrate real change, and your employer never needs to know the details. Continue the patterns that brought you here, and the video speaks for itself. The conditional mercy was more than Richard had dared hope for. Jasmine returned to her laptop, drafting the press release that would reshape corporate discrimination policies nationwide. Grand Meridian Hotels announces revolutionary dignity in hospitality initiative following CEO discrimination incident. The statement was brutally honest about the failures while positioning Grand Meridian as the industry leader in bias prevention. Every detail of the incident would be public record, but framed as a catalyst for positive change. Officer Chen finished her documentation and approached Jasmine. Ma'am, I've been in law enforcement for 15 years. I've never seen someone turn a discrimination incident into systematic industry reform in real time. Officer Chen, change happens when people with power choose to use it responsibly. Today, I had the power to create lasting transformation. Tomorrow, that example might inspire others to do the same. As Jasmine sipped her champagne, she reflected on the day's events. One seating dispute had become a corporate revolution. One moment of documented bias had triggered industry-wide policy changes. Her phone showed 47 missed calls from reporters, 23 interview requests, and 156 messages from civil rights organizations praising the transparency approach. Taylor, still live streaming to over 300,000 viewers, asked the final question. "Ms. Roberts, what do you want people to remember about today?" Jasmine thought carefully before responding. "I want people to remember that dignity isn't negotiable. Respect isn't earned through wealth or status. It's the birthright of every human being." She looked around the lounge at the faces still processing the dramatic transformation they'd witnessed. "And I want people to remember that real change is possible when we choose accountability over defensiveness, education over revenge, and systematic reform over individual punishment." The champagne service concluded as the sun set over San Fernando. The Diamond Lounge had become more than an exclusive space. It had become the catalyst for a civil rights revolution in corporate America. Justice had been served, systematically, comprehensively, and publicly. The real transformation was just beginning. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Jasmine stood in Grand Meridian's headquarters reviewing the quarterly discrimination report. The numbers told an extraordinary story. Bias incidents down 87% across all properties. Guest satisfaction at an all-time high. Employee morale improved dramatically after the toxic culture of assumptions was systematically eliminated. The dignity protocol had become the gold standard across the hospitality industry. Kevin Mitchell stood at the podium in the company's training center, addressing 200 new staff members. His 6-month suspension had become 6 months of intensive bias education, and now he was Grand Meridian's most effective discrimination prevention trainer. "I looked at Ms. Roberts and saw only her clothes, her skin color, my assumptions," he told the trainees. "I refused to see her humanity. Don't make my mistake. Every guest deserves your respect, regardless of appearance." His personal story of failure and redemption had trained over 3,000 hospitality employees across the industry. Marcus Bennett had taken a job at a small motel in rural Montana, starting over at entry level. His termination from Grand Meridian had been covered extensively in hospitality trade publications. No major hotel chain would hire him, but he'd found purpose in a victim impact program, speaking to corporate executives about the real cost of discrimination. His message was simple: 10 minutes of bias destroyed my career. Don't let it destroy yours. Richard Thornton had completed his 200 hours of community service at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. The experience had fundamentally altered his worldview. He'd left PrimeCorp voluntarily to become a full-time diversity consultant, using his story of transformation to help other executives confront their unconscious biases. His speaking fee was donated entirely to civil rights organizations. Taylor Wilson, the influencer whose live stream had captured everything, had received a full scholarship to journalism school. Her documentary about the Diamond Lounge incident had won 3 student film awards and sparked bias prevention programs at universities nationwide. The video itself had been viewed 12.7 million times across all platforms. But the most significant change was systematic. The Roberts Protocol, named after the incident, had been adopted by every major hospitality company in America. Hotels, restaurants, event venues, and tourism services all implemented similar bias prevention measures. Congress had passed the Equal Access Accommodations Act, mandating federal oversight of discrimination in public accommodations. The Department of Justice now required annual bias audits for all commercial hospitality providers. Jasmine had been invited to speak at the United Nations Human Rights Council, where she presented Grand Meridian's transformation as a model for corporate accountability worldwide. Real power, she told the assembly, isn't about having authority over others. Real power is using your position to ensure everyone else is treated with dignity. The hospitality industry hadn't just changed, it had been revolutionized. Jasmine received daily emails from guests sharing their own stories of discrimination, but also stories of hope. Hotel staff who now went out of their way to ensure every guest felt welcome. Front desk agents who double-checked their assumptions. Managers who made personal apologies when service fell short. The culture of casual bias had been replaced by a culture of intentional inclusion. On the one-year anniversary of the Diamond Lounge incident, Jasmine returned to the same seat at the San Fernando property. The staff, entirely new except for Kevin, who had earned his reinstatement, treated every guest with the same courtesy and respect. The transformation was complete, but the vigilance was permanent. The impact of the Grand Meridian transformation extended far beyond the hospitality industry. Within a year, the Roberts Protocol had become a case study at Harvard Business School, Stanford Graduate School of Business, and Wharton. MBA programs across the country integrated the incident into their ethics curriculum, teaching future business leaders about the real cost of discrimination and the extraordinary value of accountability. Dr. Gabriela Mendoza, professor of organizational behavior at NYU Stern, published a groundbreaking research paper titled The Roberts Effect: Transformational Leadership Through Transparency. Her analysis demonstrated how Jasmine's decision to confront bias publicly rather than privately had created a 400% more effective cultural change compared to traditional closed-door handling of discrimination incidents. Traditional corporate wisdom suggests handling these incidents discreetly to protect brand image, Dr. Mendoza wrote in the Harvard Business Review. The Roberts case proves the opposite: transparency creates trust, and accountability drives lasting change. The Diamond Lounge incident had spawned a new corporate philosophy that prioritized public accountability over damage control. Companies that adopted the Roberts Protocol saw a 32% increase in employee retention among minority staff and a 21% improvement in customer satisfaction metrics. The financial impact was equally impressive. Bias prevention programs modeled after Grand Meridian's initiative were linked to a 17% increase in shareholder value across multiple industries. Jasmine found herself addressing the World Economic Forum in Davos, where CEOs of global corporations gathered to learn how transparency could become a competitive advantage rather than a liability. The old model was simple: hide your mistakes and hope nobody notices, Jasmine told the assembled executives. The new model is even simpler: own your failures completely, fix them publicly, and transform them into catalysts for positive change. Behind the scenes, the transformation had required extraordinary commitment. Jasmine had personally reviewed the hiring practices across all 342 Grand Meridian properties worldwide. The audit revealed disturbing patterns: front-facing staff were disproportionately white or light-skinned, while back-of-house positions were overwhelmingly filled by people of color. We weren't just confronting individual bias, Jasmine explained to a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. We were dismantling systematic discrimination built into our hiring algorithms, our interview processes, and our promotion pathways. The solution had been equally systematic. Grand Meridian implemented blind resume reviews, diverse interview panels, and promotion criteria based exclusively on measurable performance metrics rather than subjective evaluations. Within 6 months, staff demographics began shifting across all levels of the organization. The most visible change came at the executive level. Jasmine personally mentored high-potential employees from underrepresented backgrounds, creating an accelerated leadership pipeline. By the 18-month mark, Grand Meridian's executive team had become one of the most diverse in any Fortune 500 company. When asked by 60 Minutes why she had taken such radical action after a single discrimination incident, Jasmine's response became a defining quote in corporate America: "It wasn't a single incident. It was the moment we finally saw the iceberg beneath the surface." That one moment in the Diamond Lounge represented thousands of invisible discriminatory interactions happening every day across our properties. We didn't just need to fix one problem. We needed to transform our entire organizational DNA. The transformation hadn't been without resistance. Several board members had initially opposed the $50 million investment in bias prevention, arguing it would hurt the bottom line. 3 months into the program, those same board members received quarterly reports showing a 23% reduction in employee turnover, a 14% decrease in guest complaints, and an 8% improvement in occupancy rates. The ROI on inclusion isn't just moral, it's financial, Jasmine explained in her keynote at the National Diversity Conference. When every guest feels genuinely welcomed, they come back. When every employee feels truly valued, they stay longer and perform better. The most expensive business model is one that wastes human potential through discrimination. Kevin Mitchell, once part of the problem, had become a powerful agent of change. His training program, From Bias to Bridge Building, had expanded beyond Grand Meridian to become an industry certification standard. Hotel chains worldwide sent their management teams to learn from the man who had personally experienced the consequences of unchecked bias. I was the perfect example of what happens when you think you're not racist but you've never examined your assumptions, Kevin told a packed audience at the International Hospitality Association conference. I judged Ms. Roberts based on her appearance without even realizing I was doing it. That's what makes unconscious bias so dangerous, you don't see it until someone holds up a mirror. The mirror had been particularly harsh for Richard Thornton. His journey from discrimination to redemption had become a powerful cautionary tale. The video of his public apology had garnered over 5 million views. Unlike many corporate apologies, Richard's had been brutally honest. I'm the vice president of diversity and inclusion at a major tech company, he had said, looking directly into the camera. I post about equality on LinkedIn. I have DEI in my email signature. And despite all that, I saw a black woman in a hotel lounge and immediately assumed she didn't belong there. I didn't just think it, I acted on it. I humiliated her publicly. I tried to take what wasn't mine. And I did it with absolute confidence that I was right. His redemption story had resonated with executives worldwide. Richard now consulted for Fortune 100 companies, helping them identify the gaps between their stated values and their actual behaviors. His keynote, When Your Diversity Statement Meets Your Unconscious Bias, had become the most requested corporate training program in the country. The most profound transformation, however, had happened at the front lines of hospitality. Grand Meridian's housekeepers, front desk agents, and service staff now receive the same bias prevention training as executives. Every employee carried a small card with the company's new core value: dignity is non-negotiable. Jasmine had insisted on addressing the economic realities that often prevented meaningful change. Line-level employees received living wages regardless of their position or location. The company implemented childcare assistance, educational support, and health benefits that extended to all family members. These practical changes ensured that staff could focus on delivering exceptional service rather than worrying about basic survival needs. True inclusion isn't just about how we treat people during their shift, Jasmine explained to the National Labor Relations Board. It's about creating conditions where every employee can thrive both at work and at home. You can't ask someone to deliver dignity to guests when they're struggling to maintain their own. The Roberts Protocol had evolved beyond a set of bias prevention policies to become a comprehensive framework for organizational transformation. The 4 pillars, transparency, accountability, education, and dignity, guided decision-making across the entire enterprise. When a supervisor in Bangkok was accused of religious discrimination, the protocol provided clear steps for investigation, resolution, and systemic improvement. 1 year after the Diamond Lounge incident, Grand Meridian hosted a global summit on bias prevention in hospitality. Industry leaders from 6 continents gathered to share best practices and commit to measurable diversity goals. The conference opened with a powerful moment: Jasmine Roberts seated in a standard chair while the premium seats were filled with line-level employees from underrepresented backgrounds. True leadership isn't about claiming the best seat in the room, Jasmine told the audience. It's about creating rooms where every seat is treated with equal respect. The symbolic gesture set the tone for 3 days of honest, often uncomfortable conversations about the state of inclusion in global hospitality. Hotel executives acknowledged systematic failures in everything from reservation systems that flagged unusual names for additional scrutiny to housekeeping assignments that disproportionately gave rooms with better tips to white staff members. Carlos Rodriguez, who had been demoted after the Diamond Lounge incident, made a surprise appearance at the summit. His 15% salary reduction had been painful, but the required bias training had transformed his perspective. I used to see diversity training as a checkbox exercise, Carlos admitted to the audience. Something I had to endure rather than something that could change me. When I watched myself on that video, threatening to arrest my own CEO based on nothing but her appearance, I finally understood that my biases weren't theoretical. They were determining my actions every single day. Carlos now led Grand Meridian's Guest Dignity Team, a specialized unit that responded to discrimination complaints within 24 hours. His personal experience made him uniquely qualified to identify systemic problems rather than just addressing individual incidents. We don't just resolve complaints, Carlos explained. We follow the thread to find where the bias originated. Was it in our training? Our policies? Our unspoken cultural norms? Then we fix the root cause, not just the symptom. This systematic approach had transformed Grand Meridian's reputation among travelers of color. Black, Indigenous, and other minority guests who had previously experienced subtle discrimination now reported feeling genuinely welcomed rather than merely tolerated. The company's Net Promoter Score among minority travelers had jumped from 23 to 91 in just 12 months. Jennifer Patel, the youngest staff member involved in the Diamond Lounge incident, had embraced her redemption opportunity with extraordinary dedication. During her one-year probation, she had created an innovative Dignity Champion program that empowered junior staff to interrupt bias in real time. The initiative had reduced discriminatory incidents by 62% by creating a culture where everyone felt responsible for maintaining an inclusive environment. The hardest lesson I learned was that staying silent makes you complicit, Jennifer told a group of hospitality students at Cornell University. I didn't personally say anything discriminatory to Ms. Roberts, but I supported my colleagues who did. I positioned myself to block her path. I was part of creating a threatening environment. My silence was approval. Jennifer's program trained employees to use a simple three-step intervention model: name the behavior, express the impact, and redirect toward dignity. A server who witnessed a guest making a racist comment to another patron could now confidently say, "That comment singles someone out based on their race." It creates an unwelcoming environment for everyone. In our hotel, we treat all guests with equal respect. This frontline empowerment had transformed the guest experience. Problems that would previously have escalated were now addressed immediately, creating a self-correcting culture of dignity. The most surprising outcome of the Grand Meridian transformation came from an unexpected source. Marcus Bennett, who had been publicly fired after the Diamond Lounge incident, had finally found his own path to redemption. After a year of reflection, therapy, and community service, he had founded Second Chance Hospitality, a staffing agency that employed formerly incarcerated individuals in hotel positions. His personal experience with public shame and career destruction had given him unique insight into reintegration. I lost everything because of 10 minutes of biased behavior, Marcus explained in a TED Talk that went viral. But I was given a second chance through speaking about my mistakes. That same opportunity for redemption should be available to everyone who demonstrates genuine change. Jasmine had been initially skeptical when Marcus requested a meeting, but his proposal was compelling. Second Chance Hospitality would provide comprehensive training, ongoing support, and performance accountability for individuals rebuilding their lives after incarceration. All he needed was one hotel chain willing to partner on a pilot program. The Marcus Bennett I knew a year ago would never have created something this thoughtful, Jasmine admitted to her executive team. His transformation is exactly what we hope to see in someone who's faced consequences for discriminatory behavior. Grand Meridian became the first hotel chain to partner with Second Chance Hospitality, initially hiring 50 formerly incarcerated individuals across 5 properties. The program's success exceeded all expectations. Retention rates were 28% higher than traditional hires, and guest satisfaction scores actually improved in departments with Second Chance employees. People who have experienced exclusion understand the value of inclusion at a deeper level, Marcus explained when the program expanded to 30 properties. Our employees aren't just doing a job, they're rebuilding their lives through meaningful work. That translates to extraordinary dedication and empathy toward guests. The partnership demonstrated the power of restorative justice in the corporate world. Marcus had faced severe consequences for his actions, but those consequences had eventually led to transformation rather than destruction. The Second Chance program now employed over 500 individuals across the hospitality industry, creating pathways back to dignity for people who had been systematically excluded from economic opportunity. 18 months after the Diamond Lounge incident, Jasmine Roberts received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her contributions to civil rights in the corporate sector. The ceremony at the White House recognized how a single moment of accountability had sparked a national movement toward genuine inclusion. Ms. Roberts could have handled discrimination the traditional way, with a private reprimand and a confidential settlement, the president said during the ceremony. Instead, she chose radical transparency and systematic transformation. That courage has changed not just an industry, but our national conversation about what accountability looks like in practice. As Jasmine accepted the medal, she reflected on how a moment of humiliation had become a catalyst for national change. True leadership isn't measured by how we behave when everyone's watching, she told the audience. It's measured by how we respond when we think no one is looking. The Diamond Lounge incident revealed who we really were as a company, but it also created the opportunity to become who we aspire to be. The transformation continued to ripple outward. Other industries began adopting versions of the Roberts Protocol, airlines implemented bias audits of their boarding procedures, retail chains installed body cameras for customer service interactions, and healthcare systems created accountability metrics for ensuring equal treatment regardless of race or socioeconomic status. Most significantly, the Diamond Lounge incident had shifted the national conversation about corporate responsibility for bias. When a major airline faced its own discrimination scandal, the CEO immediately implemented the Roberts Protocol rather than attempting to minimize the incident. The transparency approach that had once seemed radical had become the new standard for corporate crisis management. On the second anniversary of the Diamond Lounge incident, Jasmine returned to the San Fernando property with a special announcement. The hotel would be renamed the Dignity Institute, a combination luxury property and training center where hospitality professionals worldwide could experience immersive bias prevention education. We're transforming the site of discrimination into the epicenter of inclusion, Jasmine explained to the assembled staff and media. Every person who stays or trains here will understand that dignity isn't just a nice ideal, it's the foundation of exceptional service and sustainable business success. The Dignity Institute incorporated innovative training methods that went beyond traditional workshops. Staff experienced simulated discrimination scenarios through virtual reality, allowing them to feel the emotional impact of bias firsthand. Guest rooms featured interactive art installations that highlighted stories of resilience and transformation from people who had experienced exclusion. Most importantly, the Institute implemented a revolutionary dignity exchange program where executives spent 3 days working alongside housekeepers, dishwashers, and other typically invisible staff members. This experiential learning broke down hierarchies and created genuine empathy across organizational boundaries. The Dignity Institute quickly became more than just a training facility, it evolved into a living laboratory for societal transformation. Universities began sending sociology students for immersive research experiences. Corporate leadership programs incorporated week-long residencies to observe the practical application of bias prevention principles. International delegations arrived weekly to study how the Roberts Protocol could be adapted for their cultural contexts. 3 years after the Diamond Lounge incident, what had begun as a discriminatory encounter had blossomed into a global movement. The United Nations adopted the Dignity Framework for Hospitality, requiring member nations to implement bias prevention standards in tourism industries worldwide. Countries competing for international visitors recognized that inclusive service wasn't just ethically right, it was a competitive advantage in the global marketplace. Jasmine found herself addressing parliaments, corporate boards, and civil rights organizations across 6 continents. Her message remained consistent: dignity isn't a luxury upgrade. It's the baseline standard everyone deserves, regardless of appearance, accent, or social status. The business impact was undeniable. Grand Meridian's market share had increased by 24%, and its stock price had doubled since implementing the Roberts Protocol. More significantly, the company had attracted a new generation of talent that prioritized ethical leadership over traditional perks. Applications for entry-level positions had increased by 317%, with candidates specifically citing the company's inclusive culture as their primary reason for applying. "We're proving that doing the right thing is also doing the profitable thing," Jasmine told a gathering of Wall Street analysts. "Our commitment to dignity isn't just a moral stance, it's a business strategy that delivers sustainable growth by unlocking the full potential of both our employees and our guests." The transformation had created unexpected business opportunities. Grand Meridian now licensed its bias prevention technology to other industries. The AI-powered dignity check software that monitored customer interactions for potential discrimination had been adapted for healthcare, financial services, and educational institutions. The technology didn't just flag problematic language, it offered real-time alternative responses that maintained dignity for all parties. Kevin Mitchell had been fully reinstated after his suspension and now led the company's innovation lab, developing new applications for dignity-centered service. His latest project, an accessibility initiative that went far beyond legal requirements, was reimagining the hotel experience for guests with disabilities. "We're moving beyond compliance toward genuine welcome," Kevin explained during the product launch. "Dignity means never making someone feel like an accommodation or an inconvenience. Every guest deserves the same sense of belonging, regardless of their physical or cognitive abilities." The program had transformed traditionally utilitarian accessible rooms into some of the most desirable accommodations in the hotel. Universal design principles created spaces that were both functional and beautiful. Discrete technology provided personalized support without calling attention to differences. Most importantly, staff received specialized training in creating genuine connections rather than awkward pity or overly effusive praise. "The measure of inclusion isn't just physical access," Kevin explained to hospitality designers at a global conference. "It's whether someone feels like they truly belong in the space. That's the difference between technical compliance and authentic dignity." Richard Thornton's journey from perpetrator to advocate had taken an unexpected turn when he was appointed to lead the Corporate Accountability Initiative at the Civil Rights Project. His unique experience, having been both the source of discrimination and a catalyst for change, gave him credibility in spaces where traditional diversity advocates struggled to gain traction. "I'm the cautionary tale every executive needs to hear," Richard explained during a panel at the World Economic Forum. "I was the vice president of diversity and inclusion, and I still committed blatant discrimination when I thought no one was watching. That's how deep these biases run. They operate below our conscious awareness until they're exposed through our actions." Richard had developed a powerful assessment tool called the Dignity Gap Analysis that measured the distance between an organization's stated values and its actual behaviors. The tool had been implemented at over 500 corporations worldwide, revealing uncomfortable truths about unconscious bias at even the most progressive companies. "We found that 87% of organizations had significant gaps between their diversity statements and their daily operations," Richard reported in the Harvard Business Review. "The most common blind spot was assuming that formal policies alone could prevent discrimination without addressing the informal culture that often undermines those very policies." His work had earned him both criticism and respect. Some viewed his redemption as too easy given the severity of his actions. Others recognized the power of transformation when someone fully owned their mistakes. Richard addressed the criticism head-on during a televised interview. "I don't deserve forgiveness, and I don't ask for it," he said simply. "What I ask is that people watch how I've changed my behavior, not just my words. Judge me by what I do now, not what I say. And most importantly, use my story to examine your own blind spots. If someone with my training and position could act with such blatant bias, none of us are immune." The most profound transformation had occurred among the frontline staff across Grand Meridian properties. Housekeepers, bellhops, and maintenance workers who had previously been invisible now operated with newfound confidence and authority. The company's Dignity Assurance program empowered every employee, regardless of position, to interrupt discriminatory behavior from any source, including executives and elite loyalty members. Maria Gonzalez, a housekeeper at the San Francisco property, had stopped the company's CFO from making dismissive comments about a transgender guest. Rather than facing retaliation, Maria had received a personal commendation from Jasmine Roberts. Her courage had been featured in the company newsletter, establishing a powerful precedent that dignity protections applied to everyone, regardless of status or position. Before the Roberts protocol, I would have stayed silent, Maria explained during a staff appreciation event. I would have been too afraid of losing my job. Now I know that protecting guest dignity is my job, the most important part of it. This shift in power dynamics had created a more equitable workplace culture. When every employee could speak up without fear, bias had fewer places to hide. The result was a 76% reduction in reported discrimination incidents and a 42% increase in employee satisfaction scores. The most unexpected outcome of the transformation had emerged during a global crisis. When a massive hurricane devastated the Caribbean, Grand Meridian had converted its properties into emergency shelters, housing thousands of displaced residents regardless of their ability to pay. What made the response remarkable wasn't just the humanitarian gesture, but how it was executed. Every displaced person was treated with the same dignity as a paying guest, receiving privacy, quality food, and respectful service during their stay. When a staff member was overheard referring to shelter residents as refugees rather than guests, they were immediately corrected by a colleague. Language shapes perception, Jasmine had explained when interviewed about the company's crisis response. When we call someone a refugee or victim, we emphasize their vulnerability rather than their humanity. Every person who sought shelter in our properties was a guest deserving of dignity, not a charity case deserving of pity. This dignity-centered disaster response had transformed the industry's approach to crisis management. The United Nations Emergency Response Coordinator had incorporated the Roberts Protocol into global disaster relief training, recognizing that preserving human dignity during crisis was as essential as providing physical necessities. For years after the Diamond Lounge incident, the hotel where it had occurred hosted a remarkable reunion. Jasmine Roberts invited every staff member involved in the original discrimination, along with Richard Thornton, to participate in a public dialogue about their journeys since that pivotal day. The event was broadcast live to all Grand Meridian properties worldwide and streamed to hospitality schools across 43 countries. The conversation was raw, honest, and ultimately healing. Each participant shared how the incident had transformed their understanding of bias, accountability, and redemption. Kevin Mitchell, now a senior vice president, spoke with remarkable vulnerability. I thought I was one of the good ones. I had black friends. I considered myself progressive. But when the moment came to either challenge my assumptions or act on them, I chose to humiliate someone based solely on her appearance. That single decision revealed the gap between who I thought I was and who I actually was. Carlos Rodriguez, who had completed his period of salary reduction and now led the company's Latin American operations, described how the experience had changed his parenting. I now teach my children to question their first assumptions about people. I show them the video of how I treated Ms. Roberts as a cautionary tale. I want them to understand that bias isn't just wrong, it's a form of self-deception that prevents us from seeing people as they truly are. Jennifer Patel had been promoted to Director of Dignity Innovation after her probation ended. Her Dignity Champion program had been implemented across all Grand Meridian properties worldwide. My greatest fear was that I'd be defined forever by my worst moment, Jennifer admitted. What I've learned is that transformation is possible when we fully own our mistakes instead of defending them. My failure became the foundation for my most meaningful contribution. Marcus Bennett, whose Second Chance Hospitality now employed over 1,200 formerly incarcerated individuals across the industry, spoke about the paradoxical gift of public accountability. Being fired publicly was the most painful experience of my life. But that pain forced me to confront patterns I'd been blind to for decades. Sometimes compassion looks like consequences. Real change rarely happens without discomfort. Richard Thornton, who had become a respected voice in corporate accountability, described his ongoing journey. I still catch myself making assumptions based on appearance. The difference is that I now recognize those thoughts as bias rather than truth. Transformation isn't a destination, it's a daily practice of choosing dignity over discrimination, even when no one is watching. As each person shared their story, a powerful truth emerged: the Diamond Lounge incident had created not just organizational change, but deeply personal transformation. What had begun as a moment of casual cruelty had become a catalyst for genuine healing, not just for the individuals involved, but for an entire industry. Jasmine closed the event with a reflection that captured the essence of the journey. 5 years ago in this very room, I experienced what thousands of people of color experience every day: the casual cruelty of being judged not by who I am, but by how I look. What made that moment different wasn't the discrimination itself, but how we chose to respond to it. She looked around at the transformed space, now a global center for dignity-centered hospitality. We could have handled that incident like most companies do, with private reprimands, confidential settlements, and press releases promising to do better. Instead, we chose radical transparency, systematic accountability, and genuine transformation. The reunion concluded with the unveiling of a simple plaque in the Diamond Lounge. It read, "On this spot in 2025, a moment of discrimination became a movement for dignity. May everyone who enters this space be treated with equal respect, regardless of appearance, accent, or status. Dignity is non-negotiable." The plaque served as a daily reminder that transformation begins with acknowledgement. By memorializing a painful moment rather than erasing it, Grand Meridian had created a powerful symbol of ongoing commitment to equality. As hospitality leaders from around the world gathered to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Roberts Protocol, the industry reflected on how dramatically standards had changed. Body cameras for customer-facing staff had become as standard as name tags. Bias prevention training was now required for licensure in most countries. Anonymous reporting systems for discriminatory incidents were industry standard. Most importantly, the culture of hospitality had evolved from performative politeness to genuine respect. Across the globe, hotels had abandoned the artificial hierarchy that once treated wealthy guests as inherently more valuable than others. The new standard recognized that dignity was the birthright of every human being, not a premium amenity available only to elite status members. Jasmine Roberts had transformed not just a company but an entire global industry by turning a moment of personal humiliation into a movement for systematic change. Her journey from discrimination target to dignity champion demonstrated how individual courage could catalyze collective transformation. The most powerful question we can ask ourselves isn't whether bias exists in our organizations, Jasmine told the assembled industry leaders. It's whether we have the courage to confront it honestly when we find it. True transformation begins not with denial, but with dignified accountability. As the sun set over the San Fernando property, casting golden light through the Diamond Lounge windows, Jasmine reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as one woman standing alone against discrimination had become a global movement for dignity that transformed not just how people were treated, but how they saw themselves and others. The greatest testament to the success of the Roberts Protocol wasn't found in quarterly reports or stock prices. It was written on the faces of employees who now worked with pride rather than fear, and guests who felt genuinely welcomed rather than merely served. It was embodied in the courageous conversations happening daily across the hospitality industry, as people at all levels felt empowered to choose dignity over discrimination. True change, Jasmine had written in her best-selling book, The Dignity Revolution, isn't measured by policies or programs, but by the smallest daily interactions between human beings. When we choose to see each person's inherent value rather than their superficial appearance, we create ripples of transformation that extend far beyond our immediate circumstances. Those ripples had indeed extended far beyond Grand Meridian hotels, influencing corporate cultures across industries and national boundaries. The language of dignity had entered boardrooms, classrooms, and living rooms worldwide. People who had never heard of Jasmine Roberts were nevertheless benefiting from the standards she had established and the courage she had demonstrated. As Jasmine prepared to pass leadership to the next generation, she understood that her greatest legacy wasn't the Roberts Protocol itself, but the culture of accountability it had created. The transformation wouldn't end with her retirement because it had never been about her personal authority. It had always been about empowering every individual to stand for dignity, whether they owned the company or cleaned its rooms. The measure of true leadership, Jasmine told the young executives gathered for her final address as CEO, isn't what happens when you're in the room. It's what happens when you're not. If dignity thrives in your absence, you've built something that will outlast you. She looked around at the faces that would carry the movement forward, people of all backgrounds, ages, and experiences united by a common commitment to equal respect for every human being. The future of dignity was in good hands. As she concluded her remarks, Jasmine shared the wisdom that had guided her through the entire transformation journey. Remember that your position, your title, your status, none of these determine your worth. You were valuable before you achieved anything, and that same inherent value exists in every person you encounter. See it. Honor it. Protect it. That's how we change the world, one dignified interaction at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.